As I walked into the fire chief's office, he looked across the desk at me. Now, he's the deputy fire chief. He's the highest ranking enlisted man in the entire fire department. And I'm a little bitty nobody. It was only my third duty assignment, and I wasn't even a buck sergeant yet. Not even an NCO. I was still considered an airman. And as I'm standing there in front of him with my Bible in my hand, I read to him a passage, and he went, "That's not in the Bible." And I said, "Yes, it is. I just read it to you from the Bible." He said, "No, it's not in the Bible." And he pulled his Bible out of his desk drawer and he threw it on his desk. And he read the same section of Scripture to me and then stopped short. And I said, "No, read the next verse." And he held up his Bible and he goes, "That's the last verse in the chapter. There's not another one in the book. It goes to the next book." I said, "No, but Mark chapter 16, it says right there in verse 17, and these signs will follow those who believe in my name. They will cast out demons. They'll speak in new tongues. They'll take up serpents. And if they drink anything deadly, it will by no means hurt them. They will lay hands on the sick and they will recover." Doesn't that tell us that as believers, we have the power to pray for people and they'll be healed? And he said, "It's not in the Bible." And I said, "It's in my Bible." And this argument went on for a while. And you know, the thing that really breaks my heart about it is, from one side to the other, some denominations only use a particular version of the Bible because that interpretation suits what they want. Others have added things to the Bible and created completely different ideologies around what Scripture means. Believe it or not, we see exactly the same thing going on in the faith of Islam right now. There are Muslims who say this holy jihad, this reinstituting of Sharia law, that's not what we need to be doing in this day and age. And there are others who say you're not true to the word of the Quran if you're not engaging in Sharia, if you're not engaging in this holy war, in this jihad against the infidels. Now, here's what I do know to be true. There are a lot of notions of man that are nothing more than notions. There are lies that we believe, sometimes because they're convenient. Sometimes we believe lies that tear us apart on the inside. I remember my granny used to say all the time, "God only helps those who help themselves." And I remember having that conversation with her, and I said, "Granny, that's not in the Bible." She said, "Son, I taught Sunday school for 45 years. It's in there." I said, "Well, where?" She said, "I don't know, but it's in there." Trust me, I've studied every verse of the New Testament. It's not in there. Now, you may be able to contort some ideas and some notions and come up with the idea that God only helps those who help themselves, but it's not a scripture verse. It's not a declaration by Christ. It's not a promise made to us by God that if you'll do your part or you'll do something, then God will save you. No, salvation came at the day of the cross, and there's nothing you can do to undo it or prevent it. The price has already been paid. Your job is to accept it. When we look at Scripture, though, there are so many mistaken notions about what Scripture says. I'll give you a good example. And I was watching a preacher on YouTube the other day. This was a televised broadcast. He preaches over several campuses, thousands of people. And he made a reference about the struggles in his life. And then he said, under his breath, as he turned to walk away from the camera and back to the platform, back to the pulpit, he said, "But I look to the hills where my help comes from." And I thought, that's not in there. Psalm 121, this is the Message version, says, "I look up to the mountains, semicolon. Does my strength come from the mountains? No, my strength comes from God who made the heavens and the earth and the mountains." See, the reason that phrase became popular, and David was mocking, he was mocking them, because it was a habit of the local people to carve little statues and put them up in the mountains. And they would look at them and they would go, "I need help with my crops." And they would look to the God of fertility, or the God of crops, or the God of the harvest. And they would pray to that little statuette God in the mountains. And so looking up to the hills, I turn my eyes to the hills, is what the pagans would do, those who didn't believe in God, those who thought there were many gods rather than one God of Israel. And David was mocking them. He said, I turn my eyes to the hills. That's not where my help comes from. It comes from the Lord. I know it doesn't come from these little wooden statues and the Dagon gods. That's not where my help comes from. Those guys are useless. It comes from Elohim, from Yahweh. There are other lies that we tend to believe, sometimes about ourselves. I struggled for years, a lot less now, but it still crops up from time to time, that I'm unworthy, that because I don't have a PhD, because I don't have 50 years of experience in a field, because I'm just getting started in what God's called me to do at a late age, that I'm not going to be successful, that I really can't do what I feel like I've been called to do. And it's ironic because there are those who see me do what I do, whether I'm teaching or speaking or training or leading, and they go, wow, you're really good at that. And I can't hear them because I can't hear them. I can't believe it. And it's like that scripture verse taken out of context, or it's like that passage that people make up. Hey, I turn my eyes to the hills and that's where my help comes from. No, it's not. And it's not just that it's not the way the Word wrote it. It's not just that it's not the way the Word intended it. But it's almost a form of blasphemy to say that I turn my eyes to the hills where my help comes from when it doesn't. What you've just declared is that I'm looking to the hills for help. Well, that's not where God is. God is in your heart. God is all around you. Yes, He is in the hills, but you don't have to look to the hills for His help. You've got to call His name. You've got to humble yourself and pray. You've got to seek His face. That's where God's help comes from. It's not from the mountain. The mountain can't do anything for you. And in my own life, those struggles for me have been in the insecurity of my own confidence. The inability to look at me and say, you got this. I remember sitting in prayer and hearing those words. The reason you haven't done what I've called you to do is because you hate you more than you love those that I've called you to serve. I was rereading a little book. I've read the same passage in a different book by John Maxwell. This particular one is called What Successful People Know About Leadership. And in this one section, he's talking about self-leadership, and he says, because insecurity is often hidden in a blind spot, leaders don't recognize it themselves. So how do you know if insecurity is a problem for you? Answer these following questions. Do you feel like you need credit or have a hard time giving credit to others? Do you keep information from your staff to protect your position? Do you keep your staff away from good leaders because you're afraid they may be stolen from you? Are you threatened by the growth of others? And do you often micromanage others to feel you deserve the credit for your team's accomplishments? Now, those things are not true of me now, but there were years past when they were. Every one of those things were true of me. I didn't want my team, my people, to meet someone who was a better leader than me for fear that they would leave me and go serve them. As I've built the confidence in my leadership and my understanding of the Word and my understanding of people, that fear has begun to subside. But from time to time, it still rears its ugly head and says, you're not worthy of this. You're not capable of this. You can't do this. And all I have to know is it's not in there. There's no place in the Word where God says you're going to fail. He does say you're going to face trials, you're going to face temptations, you're going to face overwhelm, but trust me, I got this. Over and over again, the Word says the battle belongs to the Lord. He tells Joshua as he's cowering down, be bold, be strong. The battle belongs to the Lord. Let me fight it. And time after time, He calls us to move forward. Time after time, He gives us confidence. Time after time, though, He reminds us, you don't have this strength all on your own, but I'm in you. And greater is He that's in you than he that's in this earth. Or you're going to face trials and temptations, and life is going to throw everything it has at you. And you're going to find yourself face down, wanting to give up. And when you feel like it's time to quit, when you feel like there's no reason for me to charge forward, there's nothing worth fighting for left. Maybe it's at the end of a career and it's come to retirement time, or maybe it's a job that you didn't plan to leave. Maybe it's a relationship that's come to an end that you weren't planning to end. A death of a loved one, a divorce, a broken home. Those are not the things we plan in our life. And the enemy would love you to believe that this is the end, that it's done, it's over, you're out. Just tap out and be done. There's no point fighting anymore. My friends, it's not in there. It's not in there. What is in there is get up. Trust me. I got this. The words of Abba saying, I want to walk right beside you. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because He is with me. My rod and my staff, they comfort me. The reminders that a heavenly God stepped out of heaven, gave up his royalty, laid down his life. I was watching one of the previews for Ben-Hur, the movie, which comes out today, I believe. And in one of the behind-the-scenes previews, the actor who's playing the Christ and the actor who's playing Ben-Hur have a face-to-face encounter. And the Christ has fallen to the ground and the beam is on his back and they're inches away from each other. And Ben-Hur tries to give him water and the soldier smacks him with a stick and says, "No water for him." And Ben-Hur reaches for a stone to throw it at the soldier. And the Christ lays his hand on his hand. He said, "Don't fight for this. I do this of my own accord. I'm doing this on purpose. I'm doing it on purpose and with intentionality," is what he's saying. I need this to happen to be able to live in you the way that I want to. When you're face down and no one can even offer you water, when hope seems to be disappearing from you, when the enemy is whispering in your ear, "It's over. Just tap out and save yourself the pain." Remember, it's not in there. What's in there is the strength to carry on. What's in there is, "I love you." What's in there is, "I'm fighting for you so much that I died for you. And just like me, you will live again." The only question is where. The power of God is there for you, and he wants to live in you. And he does want to drive out demons, and he does want to heal the sick, and he does want to restore sight to the blind. That's what he came for. And that's what he filled you for. Regardless of the level of your leadership, whether you lead a home, or you lead a corporation, or you lead a military, or you lead a government, or you just lead you. Regardless of the level of your leadership, trust what's in the Word. I mean, what's actually in the Word, not what people have made up, not the notions that seem convenient, not even what sounds good and tickles the ear today, but what's in the Word. And if he tells you you need to fix something, fix it. If you need to get past your insecurities, as I did, get past your insecurities. If you need to trust that he's going to use you for something greater, then trust that he's going to use you for something greater. But don't add to it. You don't need to. There's plenty in here. And don't take away from it, because you'll miss the best parts of your life. My challenge for you today is to find one of those little books of promises. Go to Half Price Books if you have to. Ask them for the books of promises of the Bible. The promises for parents and promises for teenagers and promises for broken homes and promises for students. Go find one of those books of promises and start memorizing what God already said is true about you until you understand who you are in his eyes, because nobody else's opinion really matters anyway. I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.